Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk about chapter 6 in the catering text, which is on marketing. And marketing, I think, is a crucial thing for us to talk about when it comes to your hospitality business, especially when it comes to catering. I mean, think about this scenario. You're driving down the street, you see a new restaurant. You say, honey, that might be a good place to go in and eat. And you do. You're driving down the street and you see a new catering operation, if you can even see it, since they don't always advertise with a lot of signage. But you say, hey, look, a new catering operation. We need to have them for our next party. I think that's much less likely. And so we have to look at marketing a little bit different than we do for a regular restaurant. Restaurant and even a bakery to a point, they have a product that's out there in the face of the public, and I think it's a lot easier for them to get people in. So, marketing, the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. So the product is not only what you sell, but how you sell it, the services you offer. It's interesting, I put some different web pages up for you to look at, and a couple of these caterers put up their web pages I've known for years, and it's funny to see how their business has evolved. Instead of just doing catering, now they're offering different services, which we'll talk more about later. But it's definitely a good idea. Price. What are you going to charge for the different services? What are you going to charge for the different food? We're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a bit when it comes to advertising as well. Place. Where do you do it? How do you get it to people? What transportation needs are involved? The transportation personnel. And then promotion. How do you get the word out to people? Why should they choose you? How do you let them know who you are? So those are the 4 things we have to think about in a marketing plan. It would be real easy to just say put an ad into something and say we do catering. But then the first call is for 500 people, fried chicken picnic out on the farm. And you're like, well, I don't have the equipment to do that. So you've wasted the client's time, you've potentially wasted your advertising dollars, and you've wasted your time. So that's why we have to think about these 4 P's when we start to think about how we're going to market something, because there's no sense in marketing for things that you can't do. This week's discussion question, by the way, is on branding. Good for you to know what branding is and how you do it. And basically, branding is where you're developing your company's name. What is your brand? Take one of my favorite soft drinks. You think about Coca-Cola. The bottle, that iconic bottle with the curves on it, at one time was rated the number 2 most recognized advertising promotion in the world. People knew what that Coca-Cola bottle looked like. Probably couldn't tell me what an old bottle of Pepsi looked like, but that Coke bottle has withstood the test of time. So that's branding. Everything they do points to a certain thing for the company, so you'll remember. And that could be in the things we write and the things we hear. Think about jingles, all right? Are there any jingles that come to mind when you hear this jingle? Right now, farmersonly.com, that jingle, I just terrorize my wife with that because I'll whistle it and then it won't get out of her head. But it's branding, all right? You hear that jingle and you think of, the commercial. You think of how the commercial is set up and the things that are involved with that commercial. So branding is all about getting our company to be known for something. Now that could be tied to our mission statement. Say our mission statement says that we're going to do certain things for just certain groups. We're going to work with only nonprofits, all right? So you might want to tie your branding into that in some way. What do we brand? We can brand our uniforms. We could get special drinkware made up that has our company's name and logo on it. Of course, we're going to go and have we'll have a nice logo made up for the company, which really says what we do. That's one of the most crucial things when you're figuring your brand, is to get a logo that actually reflects on who you are and what you plan to do. I'm sure somewhere along the line you've seen a brand or a logo. It's like, I wonder what they do, which You know, we see commercials like this all the time, especially around this time of year with Super Bowl. You see a commercial and you're sitting there and you're watching. At the end of the commercial, you go, I have no idea what they were selling. Well, some people think that's cute. Some people think that's effective because it makes the customer really think. I think that's ridiculous. I think you have to be very clear and precise with your brand and how you market yourself. Otherwise, people are going to get bored and they're going to go to something they know. So don't be cutesy with your marketing. So you need to come up in your operation with an overall marketing plan. What things go into an overall marketing plan? Some of them are pretty simple to think about. Signage. All right. I had mentioned earlier, you don't see caterers that always have signage out. Why is that? Well, sometimes they use other people's facilities. Two, if they don't have people coming to their operation, in other words, I do only off-site catering, why would I have signage up in front of my building? Well, in a sign, once you put it up, still free advertising. People drive by and they say catering. You never know, they might have a catering need coming up, and you know, if they don't know you're there. So I think signage is important, and once again, signage that says who you are, what you're doing. You know, if I was going to do a barbecue only type of catering operation, then I might have a sign in the shape of a pig, you know, something that screams barbecue. Brochures, business cards, little flyers, menus, the stationery, all those types of things. And once again, it would be important that once you develop this logo and this brand, it be carried forward in everything you do. We use the example once again. I'm going to be a barbecue caterer, and I'm going to specialize in business and corporate barbecues from 1,000 down. So I'm going to put together some stationery and some flyers to send out to potential customers. Do you think I want to get real frilly, lazy type paper for my flyers and my menus? You know, and something really light, really pretty, maybe even, you know, pastel colors? No. We want to get something that's going to reflect what we're doing. You know, something rustic and browns, or something with denim on it. You know, something along those lines that really reflects the type of service that we provide and the people we're going to go after. If I was a very upscale, very expensive caterer, you know, choice of colors, for example, black and white or black and silver, are very rich looking. We'd want to stay away from things that look cheap and inexpensive. So, and you brand, you need to think about, you know, those things as well. Recently bought some business cards from Vistaprint. Vistaprint, I think it's all one word, vistaprint.com. And I'll be honest with you, great products. So for somebody who wants to get started in something relatively inexpensively, say you're going to be doing your own little catering operation, you can go online to some of these companies like Vistaprint, and you can design your own product. You can get 1,000 business cards for $9, which is a pretty good way to start. They'll do your stationery with the same logo, return address, labels, everything. It's a way to look like a really big fancy caterer with very little money and very little time. So you don't necessarily have to go to a fancy printing shop or something like that. Search out these online ways to build your brand. Now, as far as logo design, make careful you don't take anybody's copyrighted logo or something that's trademarked. There's tons of material out there on the web to use these days. Just make sure you don't copy somebody else's that you don't have the legal right to use. There's also a bunch of graphic arts students out there in the world. Find somebody with a graphic arts background, pay them a nice dinner, and have them do some work for you, see if they can come up with something nice. So now we've got some signage, we've got some brochures, some flyers. We got to figure out where we're going to advertise that. So, back in the day, everybody advertised in the Yellow Pages. That was where everything went. The Yellow Pages, by the way, were they were big books that had lists of phone numbers in it, and everybody bought Yellow Page advertising because that's all we had. Pre-internet days. Advertising in the Yellow Pages was crazy expensive, but everyone bought it because everybody bought it. And so if Joe was in there, then Mary had to be in there too, and they had quite the monopoly. There's still Yellow Pages online today. I don't. There are few communities still have the actual Yellow Pages book, but it's pretty much gone the way of the dinosaur. But we see a lot of advertising in web pages, on Facebook pages and stuff. Electronic media is obviously pretty inexpensive. I can put a web page up for next to nothing using GoDaddy for about $25 a year. I can use their software to design it, which is what I did for my personal web page, for my personal business page. So it's relatively inexpensive. Some of the downsides to that is they don't always look super professional. All right. Sometimes there are things that we think are really great that maybe aren't quite so great in the real world. And I put an amazing example for you up. It's under the content of this lecture. I think I put worst marketing video ever. But it's a company called Tony Ann's Catering, and they're out of New York. And they did a YouTube video, kind of an informal YouTube video about them and the company. If you don't pay attention to anything else we do in this class and don't watch anything else I put up, watch this YouTube video and then ask yourself at the end, would I use them as my caterer? It's hilarious. You'll sit there with your mouth open. So sometimes when we put these things up, we think it's a good idea, but that doesn't always end up being the case. So online, cheap, quick, up forever. But there are other ways to go about this. One of the ways that I've always liked are trade and lifestyle magazines, journals. Here's an example. I don't know if you can see, put this up here. Celebrate magazine. This is from a couple years ago. This is a big magazine in Northwest Arkansas. Okay. If you turn this over, you will see Nola's Fresh Homemade New Orleans Cuisine. Lovely picture of red beans and rice on the table there. Get that over there a little bit. We got a little chicken salad action, going in there. Got a whole other page spread here. Little muffaletta action. Some of the bacon cookies. Yes, bacon breakfast cookies. So, what did it cost me to get in this magazine? Nothing. I say nothing. I bought some people or sampled people lunch. I called the magazine. They had a little food section. I said, we've got this new operation. We got a little cafe. We're doing a lot of catering for Walmart. I'd love for you to come over and see what we're doing. Maybe do a little story on us. I'll sample a menu. Blah blah blah. So they came over. I sampled them everything on the menu. They gave me a nice spread in here. Even got a little thing on the very front cover here. Nola's Fun, Fresh, and Affordable New Orleans Eats. And free advertising. This went out to about 75,000 people is what they printed up. And these things go all over the place. So, free. And there's a lot of magazines like that. I used to always write for magazines too, which is another great way to get your name out. I used to write for 417 in Missouri, a magazine called Ozark Mountaineer, and they had a food section, Significance Magazine, and a few others. When you write for these magazines, whether they pay you or not, sometimes they would pay you, it's a great way at the end you plug your little operation, basically free advertising, and even better when they pay you. I wrote for the Springfield News Leader for over 5 years, had my own column, and once again everybody knew our operation just because of that. Every week my picture was in the paper with another article. So trade magazines, lifestyle magazines are great. Radio is another thing. Now, radio shouldn't cost you anything. There are people that pay for radio advertising, which is crazy. Not enough people listen to the radio these days, I think regular radio, to pay for it. But if you can get it for free, free is always good. So you call up the local radio station, morning talk show. Morning talk shows love this stuff. And you say, hey, we've got this little thing going on we'd like to talk to you about. We'll bring in some food. And come in, and they'll give you a 5 to 10 minute segment. You sit there and you talk about what you're doing. You give them some free food. Radio stations love that kind of thing. In Northwest Arkansas, when we did big events, we'd also get on the TV. There's 3 local television stations down there. And so you'd have to be there at like 5 in the morning because they do the morning show early. And you go and you take a plate of food, and you talk about your event. They'll ask you questions, and once again, it's free. The downside to that, funny story on this, I went in, I did like channel 33 on Thursday morning. I did the morning show, and we had a sweet potato creme brulee we were doing for a special dessert. And so I showed the sweet potato creme brulee on TV. It was really great. So the next morning, I was doing like channel 6, and I really liked the news anchor person from channel 6. She was one of my favorites. And so I was excited. I went in there, and I'm showing this. She's doing the interview, and at the end she goes, "Is that the same creme brulee that I saw on channel 33 yesterday?" It's like, yeah. And I was horribly embarrassed, and she wouldn't try it, of course. So you have to be careful about those things. But once again, it was free advertising to get out there. Service organizations. If there is a service organization in your town that you can join it. For example, in Melbourne, I know we've got a Lions Club here, and there's a few others. I used to be part of the JCs, which was a business group, and multiple others. You can get really caught up in these different organizations, but as far as networking with people, it is a great thing to do. People like to work with the people that they know, and so when you get into these different groups, it's a great way to get into business with them. Food tasting events. Most bigger towns have food tasting events. The Taste of Northwest Arkansas, the Taste of Muncie, which is, weirdly enough, what I grew up with. Now, the downside of these things, they can be kind of stuff and spew type of things. People go in, they don't care who you are, they don't care what you made, they're just going to eat. Crazy. The last one I went to was the Bacon, Bourbon, and Beer Fest in Springfield. And it was really kind of nice because they had a VIP event prior, so you could pay a little bit extra, you get some swag stuff, but you actually got to go in without a whole bunch of other people and talk to the caterers and meet them, find out who they were. It was really nice. When they open the door, though, to the regular crowd, it's really just people rushing in to drink and eat as much as they could. The downside, once again, to those things is you're paying for all this free product that you're just going to give away. Upside, you can see 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 people in a very short time and get your name out there to a lot of people that obviously like your type of product, or else they wouldn't pay 50 or 100 bucks to go eat it. But you are going to supply a whole lot of free food. So when you're planning what you're going to do, this is not the type of thing you would do the beef fillet or the lobster tail for. You do something cheap. In fact, this bacon event that we went to, the best thing we ate all day was a bacon, or it was a beer cupcake. A beer cupcake with a bacon frosting, which was crazy good and relatively cheap. It was a nice small little bite, even though we went back multiple times. So, other things that you can do, and I'm not as big a fan of this, but newspaper advertising. No one really advertises much in the regular newspaper anymore. It's ineffective. It's kind of like the Yellow Pages. When everybody puts an ad and says, local catering, it tends to get people to call about one thing. They're not calling about service, they're calling about price. We here at the school get phone calls all the time from people saying, "Hey, I'd like you to do this. I've got this to spend," if they want to tell you what they want to spend. But it's usually price shoppers. So that generic advertising, I think, is a really bad idea. I think it'll waste a lot more time. Your book suggests following engagements and things like that. If you see an engagement in the paper, call them. That always reminds me of being an ambulance chaser. When somebody has an accident, the attorney calls them to represent them. So I think if that's the only way you can get people is to call them. It's a way if I was going to start out, but you can spend a ton of time calling people without any results. So if you're going to do that, have another backup marketing plan at the same time, and don't rely just on cold calling or calling people that you don't know. Business to business networking, I really like this one a lot. And you'll notice this when you look at a couple of the web pages I put up of different caterers. Here's where we're going to work with other businesses. For example, and we mentioned this weeks and weeks ago, I'm going to work with only a specific florist, I'm going to work with a specific photographer, and then we tell them, If you only use us as your caterer, then we'll all share in the wealth. So when I recommend Joe Smith to be the photographer and Mary Jones to be the florist, that's the only people I'm going to recommend. And then I'm going to get a little cut when they get this business booked. I'm going to get, say, 10% as a referral fee. And it's the same thing. When I bring in a catering and I refer to them, or they refer an event to me, I'm going to give them a cut of it. So we basically all work together. So now instead of just one person marketing, now I've got 3 different entities in that example, all marketing for all of our businesses at the same time. And I think that is a really tremendous way. You'll notice from the web pages, some of these companies have done everything in-house. In other words, I am your caterer, I'm also your florist, I'm also your photographer, I also do your music, whatever. And there is nothing wrong with that. It's just you're going to hire, you're going to have to hire people with different skill sets. Catering Concepts, I listed them. They actually owned a florist shop as well as a catering shop. They were 2 different entities. They didn't really try to do them together, but then they referred one to the other. Nothing wrong with that. It's just it requires you to go out and find and hire competent people to run those different, rather than doing the job that you really plan to do and you're good at, and getting a professional from another business. Anyway, last, the best marketing for a caterer, the absolute best thing, is word of mouth. And word of mouth is when someone says something good about you to someone else. Now, that can also be one of the things that hurt you the most. You go on Yelp sometime and look on reviews for some of these different catering operations that you might find. And, when someone says they're overpriced, they're rude, they're late. Croutons, which I listed their webpage too, is an interesting story because there's 2 people, and I think it's the same person, that posted 2 almost identical complaints and gave them a 1 star. The funny thing about Croutons and why I put it up is their website is actually really nice now. It used to be the worst. In fact, I used it for years as one of my worst examples of a web page because the way they laid out their food was ridiculous. It looked like a schoolgirl did it. I didn't mean that in that way, but it looked like a young child did it. It looks a lot better now. But they've got some ugly reviews on there when you look at under Yahoo. But word of mouth, people want someone they can trust with catering. Why do I pick a certain caterer? Hopefully it's not because of price. Hopefully it's because I like their food, but more importantly, I've heard great things about you. I know you'll do the job. You'll be on time. There'll be enough food. It'll be prepared right. There's not going to be any surprises. And that's why we do it. So try to come up with things that will get people to refer you. Get a referral program. All right? So for every referral that you give to us, or once you give us 5 referrals, we're going to give you a special Christmas tray, Christmas goodies. If you were going to get a nice deli meat tray or even a cookie tray at Christmas for nothing, for just saying, by the way, I would use Joe Smith's catering, would you do that? Cookies are cheap. Even a deli tray is cheap compared to an ad online or a lot of printed advertisement. So do things to get people to use your service and then reward those people that use you. All right, that's this week on marketing. Be sure and check out those video examples. Like I said, I think they're pretty relevant and funny. And have a good week. Thanks.